The unexpectedly rapid fall of the Vandal kingdom can be easily explained if we study their century-long rule in Africa. The barbarians did not engage in nation-building, plundering one by one everything they could reach, first their neighbors, and soon their own subjugated peoples. Thus remaining strangers to the population, unmixed by marriage or religion, the Vandal tribe dispersed itself throughout the kingdom and greatly diminished, so that after the conquest, Velizarius took out of Africa only a few thousand former rulers of Africa. King Helamer continued the resistance in the Atlas Mountains. He was sheltered by allied tribes of Maurutians. The Byzantine detachment sent in pursuit tried to storm the mountain fortification, but after failure withdrew and tightly encircled the shelter of the fugitive king. Soon, Helamer and his followers felt all the hardships of the siege. Dirty and hungry, not at all ready to return to the semi-wild state of their unpretentious ancestors. It is said that when Helamer saw two children fighting over some small coarse tortilla, when the little Mauritius literally squeezed out of the Vandal uneaten pieces, he completely fell in spirit and agreed to surrender. Velizarius, taking him as a trophy in addition to the gold, silver, and surrendered Vandals, departed for the capital, where evil tongues were already whispering to Justinian about the impermissible independence and ambitions of the triumphant. For those months that Helamer sat in the mountains, the Byzantines sent their ships to all edges of the former Vandal kingdom. The fleet appeared in the former cities of the empire, accepted the surrender of the local Vandal garrison, and established their own administration. Having conquered Sardinia, Corsica, and the Balearics, the Byzantines sailed to the Sicilian city of Lilybae, which the Vandals stubbornly held on to. It was the nearest port if you sail from Carthage across the sea. To the surprise of the Greeks in the city were already dominated by the Ostgoths, who said that under the treaty Sicily fully belongs to them, and since the Vandal kingdom has disappeared, the city, which they were mercifully allocated, returns to the possession of Italy. The Byzantines made no argument for the time being and sailed back. A similar trick tried to pull, and Visigoths, young men Tuidas, sailed across the Strait of Gibraltar and seized the strategic port city of Ceuta. But here already with them did not begin to talk, and the fleet which conducted the conquest of the coast of Africa ended his glorious campaign with victory, kicking the Visigoths back to their side of the sea. But in addition to the neighboring kingdoms of the Germans, the former provinces of Africa were filled with many self-proclaimed kingdoms and empires of Berbers, Maurutians, Afro-Latinians, and other rabble, who, taking advantage of the weakness of the Vandals, grabbed cities and areas in the depths of the country, and were not at all happy about the emergence of the Byzantine Empire. The very population of the African provinces had survived the collapse of the huge Roman latifundia over the centuries, and had acquired their own piece of land. The peasants were afraid that the Byzantines would resume the old orders and turn all the freed inhabitants back into slaves. Byzantine soldiers left in the cities as garrisons began to marry Vandal women en masse, taking advantage of the fact that the men were taken away. Their aims were self-serving. In this way, they began to lay claim to the plots that the Vandals had previously given away to their soldiers. In the future, when the soldiers learn of Justinian's decision to confiscate all Vandal possessions in favor of the state, their deceived expectations will lead to a powerful revolt, but that will be a couple of years from now. For now, as soon as Velizarius sailed off to report on his success, an alliance of several Moorish kingdoms revolted. They began to beat up small detachments of Greeks. In his place, Velizarius left a commander named Solomon, and he, having gathered an army, conducted several brilliant battles, showing that discipline and good weapons defeat any number of half-naked brigands on camels. So, as we see, Africa was full of problems, and the prospects of the empire in these lands were still very vague. As for Velizarius, he was honored with a triumph in the capital, a spectacle that had only been seen in Rome before, and unless you count the emperors who like to organize triumphs for themselves, it was the first in 600 years. A festival dedicated to the commander. Byzantium received the untold wealth that had once been taken from Rome by the Vandals. Vandal warriors were accepted into the army and garrisoned. King Helamer was publicly stripped of his purple cloak and kneeled before the emperor. The barbarian, who did not renounce Arianism, was spared and lived out his days somewhere in the estate, in the wilderness of Asia Minor. As soon as the holiday thundered, Velizarius has already received a new order. He again received several thousand soldiers, the same fleet, and the next ambitious order, to probe the defense of the Ostrogoths, and if possible to capture Sicily. In case nothing succeeds, the commander was ordered not to get involved in the war and sail to Africa, pretending that the incident was a misunderstanding. A similar order was given to Commander Mund. He was to, acting in the Balkans, to try to capture Salona. The reasons that prompted Velizarius to begin such openly unfriendly actions towards the Ostgoths I will explain in the continuation. At that time we shall know whether the Imperials had any luck.